Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first Guitar for Vets Workbench. I'm your host, Daniel B., Guitar for Vets Cav Arts virtual chapter, guitar instructor, and also host for the Cav Arts events that we have, and a team member of the G4V Guitar Shop. Wow, that's a long thing I got going on in it. Anyway, I do a lot of stuff. Every good guitar store has a technical and repair section, and they provide services from changing strings and cleaning, some repairs, as well as performing setup and modifications on your guitar, or in my case, guitars. Those services are not free, believe it or not. There are guitar maintenance skills that you yourself can learn to perform on your guitar and save some money and a trip to your local guitar shop. For some folk, there is not a guitar shop that is conveniently located nearby your location, and learning guitar maintenance skills are important to keeping your guitar in top condition. The G4V Workbench and crew are here to help and with learning some of those skills. And at the end of tonight's event, I'll have y'all unmute your mics for questions and comments. Please bear in mind that everything that is talked about or demonstrated by the Workbench crew is based on the Workbench crew's experienced opinions, skills, and knowledge. Every effort is taken to verify any information put forth. Any references to brands is for demonstration purposes only, and the G4V Workbench has no affiliation with any of these brands that are mentioned. It is my pleasure now to introduce the Workbench crew, and you know him from the guitar shop, guitar guru John DeMarco. Also with us is Matthew Lorance. Am I pronouncing your name right, Matt? You're muted, Matt. And the man with the big mustache there, that's Leif Peterson. All right,
It's a big mustache. It's not the biggest mustache in the room, though.
What are you saying, man?
It's skill. Mustache is a skill.
I'm doing my best David Crosby impression, so you gotta let it go. Workbench crew, the fate of guitars all over the known universe are now in your hands, or at least the ones y'all own. So, off to you, John. Oh, I'm sorry, not John. Off to you, Leif. Leif is going to help us out first here.
Yeah. So, okay. I think everybody here is prior military. And if you take some of those skills of maintaining gear from your previous life to this one, instead of the PCIs and the PCCs that, you could call it a pre-performance. So a PPI, a pre-performance inspection or a checklist. And, to that extent, we published a checklist so you can PMCS your own guitar. And, talking about owning multiple guitars, I actually keep a binder, kind of like my own training room for all my gear. Just something to keep in mind. With that checklist, you won't miss as much. And you can also add your own notes, like if you have an active pickup, or for like this guitar has a built-in tuner, you also need to check your batteries. So, other than that, John, you want to take it away? But if you guys want to pull up the checklist or take notes, that's something you would want to do today to help you maybe focus in on what you need to get done. John,
right.
You're up.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Hey, I got a whole bunch of stuff sitting here on my bench, and just for anybody who doesn't know me, I am absolutely in love with guitars. Have been my whole life, and so I'm not going to say you need to have everything that you see, right? I just want to give you a kind of a quick, hey, what would you need for some maintenance and restringing work? So the first thing I would mention is, strings, right? And we're going to have a whole section where we're going to talk about strings, but you got to have strings. And I can't tell you how often when I was younger, I'd buy one set of strings, and then invariably one of those strings would break, maybe even while I was trying to get it up into tune. So my rule is always buy 2 packs of the same strings, just in case something goes wrong when you're restringing. And so, there's all different kinds of types of strings, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. The next thing is you got to have some basic tools. This happens to be kind of a fun little thing called the octopus. You'll see that it's got different size, what I would call ratchets or something like that, or hex wrenches in it, and it also has a flat blade and a Phillips screwdriver in it. So handy to have. You can also get yourself a set of small screwdrivers for all the little screws that are on guitars, although that one tool does me pretty well. When you're cleaning and working on it, I like to have a brush, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. The next thing is you might need some cleaning solutions, and we're going to talk more in depth about that in a minute, but this happens to be fretboard conditioner, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I've got, for cleaning material, this is actually nothing more than Windex, 1 part Windex, 2 parts water. Now, anything you put on your guitar, you want to think about, is it going to do something to the finish? So always try this stuff in a discrete area, and just a little bit. And a little bit goes a long way. That's why I have little bottles of it to remind me I don't need to use a lot. And then I also have a little bottle of alcohol that quite often I use. Then we get into what else do you need? Well, I kind of live and die by the tape, either the green or the blue stuff, that's not quite as tacky as normal tape, masking tape, and I use it all over the guitar for a variety of reasons, usually to protect the guitar from getting scratched by something I'm doing. And then after that, it's kind of nice to have an extra set of bridge pins. They seem to break at the worst time. I'll try to show you a little technique to hopefully not break them, but it's nice to have some extra ones just in case you need them. And I bought a couple dozen of them at one point in time, and I've not used them up yet. Some little swabs for getting into some really little places, that can come in handy. And I can't tell you how often and how many microfiber cloths I get through whenever I'm working on guitars. And you'll see me change out a dry one for a wet one on a regular basis. So that comes in handy. Then there's all kinds of tools to make stringing your guitar easier. This happens to be a crank that also has a little tool on the end here that I'll demonstrate later to help you get your string pegs out on your acoustic. Otherwise, we probably all got one of these in our graduation pack or something that looks similar to it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some wire cutters. This is a little shield. You can usually get a set of 3 or 4 of them, different sizes, and you use that when you're working on your frets. Otherwise, you can just use masking tape on either side of your frets just so you don't scratch your fretboard. And again, something we'll demonstrate a little bit later on. Not something you absolutely have to have, but I like a neck rest. It kind of keeps the guitar planted for me. And I use it all the time. And then a couple fun things. This is called a non-woven abrasive, made by a company that I actually worked for 30 years. Basically it's a Scotch product. It's a 3M product. What's really cool about this is the same as triple-aught steel wool, but it's not metallic. And the reason I started using it was I realized that if I wasn't careful, or even when I was careful, a lot of times the steel wool would get stuck on the magnets on my guitars. So that's kind of the big, long list there of that stuff. So I guess the next thing is I'm going to get the guitar up on the bench. And then, by the way, on my bench, you'll see I've got something nice and soft. You can use a blanket. You can do some of this work on your sofa, whatever you want to do to protect the finish on your guitar.
Hey, John, what do you put all your stuff in?
All my stuff in.
Yeah, how do you keep it all together?
I have a big tackle box that I use, and actually, Leaf, when my shop is in a little bit better condition, I'll give you guys a tour of my shop. I have it is bulging with uh, tools and containers and all kinds of stuff because I not only work on guitars, but I actually have built quite a few of them. So yeah, so I try to keep things organized. I'm not as good as I could be because I'm always working on 3 projects at once. But we do what we can do. Um, okay, so let me look at our list here. Oh yeah, can you put up that slide, Daniel, on relief and back bow? There we go. So the first thing when I put a guitar, whether it's something new, and I get a lot of used guitars through here because the vets in my chapter like to have me work on stuff, and I volunteered to do stuff for my friends, and of course I'm always picking something up for $50 and then working on it. But the first thing I would do, and we're not going to do a setup this month. We're going to do a setup next month, where we do something with the truss rod and the saddle and the nut. But one of the things I would always check before I unstring a guitar is, are my frets basically level? And uh, there's a special tool that you can use to do that. But the big thing that I wanted to say with this slide here is, especially Strats, they tend to be very, very straight necks. But on acoustics, you will find that sometimes they have a little relief, which means it's a front bow, and sometimes they have a little bit of a back bow, and maybe either one of those is okay. It's sort of how you like to play and what you like the action to be. But one of the first things I do, and Daniel, you can switch off that, and I'll go back to my top here. The first thing I do when I look at a guitar on the bench is, are the frets level? And then this is a fancy one. You don't need a fancy one, but it's a fancy one where you can actually see if your neck is straight and if there's any rocking. And there's other tools you can use. And again, we're not going to do a setup tonight. We're going to wait and do that next month. But it's something I would notate, right? If I wasn't going to do the setup tonight, I'm just changing the strings. It's something definitely that I would take a look at, just to notate and then realize what's going on. The other thing I would use, and again, next month we'll talk more about this in depth, is there's these special little measuring devices, and you can get them really inexpensively online. And it allows you, if you can see this little silver boxes here, what it allows you to do is measure how high your strings are from the frets. And so we'll demonstrate that in more detail next month. But again, I would kind of do a basic check to make sure that I'm within where I think it should be for my playability. And that's different for everybody, and it depends on the kind of music you play. But the good news is, what you can do is you can get a setup going where where you're comfortable, and then you can measure to make sure it's going to be okay. We're not going to dive into it tonight. So that's kind of the whole thing about that. The next thing I'm going to talk about, and I'll demonstrate it next month, fret buzzing, and that's just simply going up the neck.
Hey, John, can you turn
Yeah.
on your true audio?
Oh, sorry.
We're not getting any music.
Well, trust me, it was fine. Yeah, yeah.
Does it sound good? No buzz?
Yeah, no buzzes.
No
Again,
buzz?
next month
Oh,
when we do a
good.
setup, when we all do a setup, I'll show you an example. I've actually got a video of an example of a guitar that really needed a lot of work because there was a lot of fret buzzing. But again, it's more informational, right? It's not about changing the strings or cleaning the guitar, but it's more informational. And it's kind of like, it depends on how often you change your strings, but however often it is, if it's once a month or once a year or every 6 months or whatever is comfortable for you, you should be kind of going through that checklist that's been created. And this is some of the stuff that you can notate on there when you find something wrong. So with that, I'm going to just go to unstringing the guitar, and there's all these different, let's call them techniques. And I think the whole crew will agree, there's no real right or wrong thing. One of the things that people worry about is sometimes, a string kind of snapping and hurting the finish or something. I see a lot of folks who, when they're working on a guitar, they'll do something like this to protect, and also make sure nothing goes inside the sound hole. And that's great. I have to tell you, I don't usually do that, but tonight I did it, so there we go. And so then it's time to loosen the strings, right? So I can do that by hand, or I can use a little gadget that I bought for $9 that fits on my little screwdriver. Don't do this with a drill. It goes too fast. And now I can loosen my strings, and I'll change my camera angle here so you can kind of see. I can loosen my strings really fast.
Boy, John, that's the quietest drill I've ever heard.
I think it's because it thinks it's a musical instrument.
Oh, I see. That's what it's
Yeah.
got to be. Have you ever taken one of those electric screwdrivers and put them over a pickup?
No.
Give that a shot.
it's fun.
Yeah.
So the other thing you can do is you can actually buy one of these. I got it for myself as a little present. Let's see. Yeah. And it's actually a brand name. It's called a Power Peg. And the only thing that makes it fancier to me is it's got a trigger that lets you go forward and reverse real quickly. It's about $20. It's not a big thing. In any case, you want to make sure all your strings are loose before you start cutting them free from the world.
So John, why wouldn't you just want to pop your the securing pegs out once it's loose? Why would you want to cut it instead of just popping the peg loose?
It's a good question, and the truth is that some people are cutters and some people aren't. Actually, it doesn't matter to me. I was taught that the next thing I do here is go through here and start cutting. Okay, but there's absolutely no reason that you can't, use a little tool like this and start loosening my. And let me change my angle one more time for you. And just start popping these little guys out. Or another way to do it. Oh no. There it is use one of these little guys. There's this little notch here. And then you could just start popping these little guys out. Put them someplace where you'll find them again. So there's the two I cut. Here's one I didn't cut. And that was why I was taught to cut them, is that sometimes there's still a little tension on them and they'll kind of pop. And you don't want to get hurt or hurt the body or the anything. But any of it works. And then down here on this end, you just start unwinding. Now I have a niece who, if I don't cut them, she's happy to take these and turn them into rings or bracelets, at least the thick ones she's happy to do. So, you know, these are going in the trash because I cut them, or some of them are cut, but she makes these really pretty rings that are made out of guitar strings. Leif and Matt, anything you want to talk about before I jump into cleaning?
You know, once you pop those off and you look in those holes, you can look for damage in the bridge. That's one of the best times to start looking to see if anything's popping loose and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the things that now that you've got it completely clean of your strings, you know, it is good to make sure you haven't got any cracks, anything broken, nothing's loose. The nut is definitely glued in, but the bridge usually is just in there by friction. And there are some cautions you need to take if you have a piezo underneath your bridge. And this guitar doesn't have that, but I have had problems where the piezo, if the bridge comes out, the piezo gets kind of misaligned, and then you get certain strings that are quieter than others. So that would be my only thought about, you know, if you've got a acoustic electric, to be careful with that. So, guys, anything else we want to add to that?
The other thing I would mention is if by any chance you tip the guitar or you move the guitar and your saddle actually falls out of the bridge, it really only goes in there one way. So maybe take a look at it before it falls out so that you make sure that the offset end is on the lower strings.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have to tell you that when I first started doing this kind of stuff, even like rewiring and whatnot, I took a lot of pictures with my phone, you know, so that you can figure out how it looked before. So yeah, good, very good point.
Well, the same for when you de-string. Maybe take a picture of your headstock, because I can't tell you how many guitars that I've restrung for people that had strings going two different directions on, or four different directions on two different sides. So maybe you should take a picture of your headstock and see how they're supposed to look. So when you're done, they all look the same.
Yeah, good point.
So can I ask, do you guys, Matt or John, do you guys use any string cleaners or like the string ease, anything to maintain your string, the life of your string? Because a lot of people are asking when to change them, you know, and that, you know, like the ones I buy are pretty expensive for strings, but if I don't like the sound, I change them
I buy strings about once a month.
once a month.
I'm not
But
the
you
one
guys,
that would, not to talk to about cleaning them or anything, because I play an hour a day, and by a month I've destroyed them. So I usually just change mine once a month. But I have heard of people who've used the products you're talking about that have had great luck. The thing I would say to anybody is, if you think you may want to try to clean your strings instead of it, nothing says that's wrong. Go to your local guitar shop and buy some string ease or some string cleaner. Try it, see if you like it. You may or may not.
Yeah, I have to admit I don't use that stuff, but doesn't mean it doesn't work, because I've never tried it, to be honest with you. But yeah, you know, my thought about string. Well, and the other thing is, like lately, I've been on a I've been on a quest. I have a lot of different manufacturers' strings sitting in my drawers, and so I kind of like when the strings are still fairly new, I like to change them out so that I can tell the difference between how they feel and they sound to me. We were talking before we went live. Matt was talking about how, as his hearing has changed, he's changed the strings that he likes. I think that's a really good point, and the only way you can know that is to try it more than one kind. So with that, why don't we have you guys get to the slides and talk about different kinds of strings?
So once you take your strings off your guitar, a lot of times you're going to need to condition your fretboard. And people always ask, how do I know if I need to condition my fretboard? Well, you can normally look at a fretboard and just tell if it's dry, or maybe you can't. But I'm just saying, this is my experience. I normally condition my fretboard every other time I change strings. Again, I change strings a lot, so that maybe not be the best thing to go with, but there's a lot of products that you can use. I put some of them up on the slide there with some prices that were just Thursday's prices on Google from different retailers. Some of that you can find cheaper, some of it will be more expensive. But Music Nomad, Diodario, Dunlop, all make different fretboard conditioners that work really well. I've used a couple of those. I noticed that Dan showed one earlier that he uses, so those are some of your options. If you don't want to use a commercial project, you have options like lemon oil or mineral oil. I saw a bottle of mineral oil on sale at a drugstore. It's a national chain for $5.99 that would last you for the rest of your life. So if you wanted to use something like that, a lot of people use mineral oil on like wood cutting boards and wooden bowls. Same kind of thing. Your fretboard is just a piece of wood. And some people use common household oils like olive oil and coconut oil. I would just caution you, as the slide says, that those oils can go rancid and they can smell. So you may want to consider that before breaking out your wife's extra virgin olive oil or your husband's extra virgin olive oil and using it. A note on there, and I don't know, I can't really see my screen right now because of the slides, but I'm holding up a guitar that has a maple fretboard that has a polyurethane finish, and you should, if you can see it, I don't know if you can, it's really shiny. You never want to put anything on a fretboard that's coated like this that has a finish on it, because it's just going to make a big sticky mess. And obviously, if it's covered by polyurethane, you are not going to get to the wood. So you're not going to be conditioning anything. So those are just some common things that are available out there to clean the fretboard. I know Dan's going to talk about cleaning the fretboard more either today or next time around, even talking about polishing some frets and stuff. So we'll leave that there for now. So if Dan, if you'll advance the next slide, we'll just go over some quick string things. I'm not going to read these stuff to you because y'all can all read. I think most of you know what really is out there. But yeah, linseed oil, Michael, I saw you pop up in the chat. That works well. A lot of people use linseed oil. A lot of people boil their linseed oil before they use it. I'm not sure why. You'd have to Google it, because since I don't use those oils, I would have to research them also. I'm going to basically just talk about acoustic guitar strings today. I think most of us here with Guitars for Vets on Cav Archer play acoustic guitars. I mean, it's already 8:05, so I don't want to waste a lot of time. I didn't want to put every string out there, but some of the main strings that are out there and available are the 8020 bronze is probably one of the most popular. They're bright, they're crisp, they're lively. I've found that these are normally the least expensive of the strings out there. Your mileage may vary depending on your body chemistry and your body oils and how you interact with the strings. And let me tell you, if somebody tries to tell you your body chemistry does not matter, they are not correct. Your body chemistry does matter. There are some strings that I can touch and in 3 days they'll be tarnished, and there's strings that I'll use for 3 months and they won't be. The next strings that are really common with acoustic guitars are phosphor bronze. I think they're one of the most popular acoustic strings out there. They have some corrosion resistance. They're warmer, they're richer. Here again, my opinion and my experience, they last longer than the 8020 bronze strings. I think AI even agreed with me on that. A little more expensive. on the Google that I did, last week looking at this. There are silk and steel sets. These are more kind of specialized sets. They incorporate silk and nylon in their wrapping. They're smooth. A lot of fingerstyle players use them. A lot of beginners use them. Just as a side note, if you've ever considered converting a right-handed guitar to a left-handed guitar, there's some stuff you have to do. You have to change the nut and everything, but sometimes using those strings will allow you to see if that works for you, just because they don't have as much tension on them. And like I said, they're a lot easier on the hands. And they're comparatively priced to everything else. Nickel bronze strings. I have never used nickel bronze strings, but I do believe the internet tells me that they have some enhanced projection, particularly in the middle strings. That's what the internet tells me on those. I've never used them. If anybody here wants to talk about them when we get to the question and answer, that's awesome. If you have experience, I'd love to hear it. Aluminum bronze are the same things. They're enhanced clarity and volume with strong corrosion resistance. Aluminum, if you think about aluminum cans, you have more corrosion resistance there. And then the Monel are native alloys of kicker and knocker. They supposedly provide a broken in tone, and they have good corrosion resistance. Again, that's nothing I had ever tried before, so I'm going with the collective hive mind of the internet when they say that they provide that broken in tone. Personally, I don't want a broken in tone. I want my strings to sound new. I want them to sound new every day. But unfortunately, we don't get that out of our guitar strings. So those are some of the types of strings. You can get strings either way, coated or uncoated. Coated strings, like, I'm just going to throw an example out there. I'm not endorsing them, obviously, but the D'Addario XS strings are coated phosphor bronze strings for acoustic guitars. They're normally a little bit more expensive, but they do prevent some of that corrosion. So if you are one of those players who notice that you eat through strings, or your strings corrode really fast, or your strings die really fast, you might want to throw the extra $10 out there and just try it. Not saying it's going to work, but give it a try. Of course, uncoated strings are just traditional strings, which because they're not coated and they're not protected, they do lose their brightness quicker and they're less expensive. And then strings can also be wound differently. We have round wound, try to say that 3 times really fast, round wound strings. Those are the most common types of strings we buy. We have bright tone and everything. Flat round strings, which I have used, they have a flat, smooth surface. They do feel different. Trust me, they feel different, but they do offer a little darker tone. And I don't guess I noticed the reduced finger noise, but that's how they're advertised. I did notice the darker tone, and then being a smoother string. The half wound is a good compromise between the two, they say. Again, I normally use round wound strings, so if you have an interest in reducing your finger noise, or you want to retain the brightness while reducing some of that noise, I would encourage you to go out and experiment, because like he did say, I got hearing aids about 2 years ago, and I went from being a diehard one string is all I'm using forever, this is my only string, to hating that string after I got my hearing aids and never being able to use it again and having to change strings. So as you change and as you change, you may end up changing strings. I would also say that some guitars are like kids. They don't want to wear the same thing. So I have some guitars that sound better with different strings. And I have one guitar, I told you I like coated strings. I have one guitar that's never had coated strings on it because it has just regular phosphor bronze on it, and that's all I like on it. I've tried other stuff on it. So sometimes the guitar is going to tell you what kind of strings it wants to sound the best. And then the core type, I think that's really getting into the weeds. Most of our guitar strings, if you ever cut one and look at it, they're hexagonal. They're brighter, they're stiffer, they're consistent. The round core, they say, are more flexible, and they have a vintage tone with a slightly fatter sound. That fatter sound might actually be more muddy or darker, or however you define a fatter sound, because that's part of the problems too with when we start talking about guitar strings and I say I like this and I like that, and these are brighter and these are fatter and these are muddy. Well, those are all subjective terms to what you like or what you hear. So I would encourage everybody to try a few different sets of strings on your guitar if you can afford them. I like to say they're not that expensive, but try a few different types on your guitar, see what you like, see what your guitar likes, and go from there. John?
Excellent.
Hey,
Hey, you know what I have
can I throw in
tried?
there
Go
real
ahead.
quick, Daniel? We were talking about changing strings, and you had mentioned nuts and having to change out nuts for strings. We did not talk about string gauge, which is the size of the string. I tend to use very similar, like on my acoustics and electrics, very similar sizes. I don't know if you guys have any experiments, but if you go for a bigger string, you may have to change out the nut if that is not what the guitar is built for. And when you do change out those strings and that nut, you do want to lube that nut up so the string can slide back and forth.
Yeah, there's a couple of really good videos that Rick Beato, if you look for him on YouTube, did a couple really nice, one on acoustics and one on electrics, where they took the same guitar players, three of them, and they rotated the strings through different gauges to hear what the difference was in the sound, and then talk about the playability. And it's a couple of 20-minute videos, and it was really interesting. And one of the most interesting things that they came up with, and these are all pro players, they were all surprised that they thought the lighter strings sounded just as good as
the heavier
mediums and the bigger strings. So check that out if you want to. But it's a nice experiment that they did. I'm all about how does it feel, right? And then also how does it sound. And then that we were talking about, making sure that the strings slide in the nut. We'll talk about that in a minute when we start stringing this guitar back up again. Let me just look at our list real quick. Yeah, so let's just talk about cleaning and polishing the body. I'm going to change my view again. So one of the things that I usually tell my students is, they give you that pack when you graduate, and it's got a micro weave cloth, and it's got a big bottle of polish. I always tell them, use the cloth every day, right? Wipe off your guitar, wipe off the strings with that cloth, throw it in the washer once in a while, and then only use the polish once in a while. I'm really of the opinion that sometimes if you get too much polish, too much wax on an instrument, it actually collects more dirt and grime than you'd hope. So the first thing I do when I start cleaning up my guitar is I just use a nice soft cloth and nothing on it at all, right? And then you just make sure you've got clean hands, but then just make sure that, does it feel smooth? Do you see any fingerprints? Do you see anything going on that you don't like? Front and back, obviously. And then, if you do find a situation where you've got some schmutz on there that you just can't wipe off, that's when you would go to a light cleaner that hopefully won't, damage the finish. Again, if you've never used the cleaner before, do it in a discreet place to make sure you're not going to do something terrible to the finish. In particular, silicone sprays are not good for a lot of finishes. It'll eat right through it. And then the other thing is, don't use a lot. I think I showed you earlier, I've got my little bottles, and literally, and I think I can widen this out. Let me look and see. There we go. If I thought I had to do a little something with this, I would never put it on the body itself. I would always put it onto a paper towel or a rag, and just a little bit, right? And then I would go at it and do my cleaning with it, and then come back with a dry part, and don't let anything wet sit on there for any length of time, right? This is a wood instrument, and even though there's a finish on a lot of it, you really don't want it soaking, and you don't want it sitting there forever. And then we come to the holy grail, right? It's the fretboard itself, and here's one of those things. Again, I wouldn't spend a lot of time. Like I probably would not condition my fretboard every single time I change strings. That's just me. But again, I'd go through with a clean cloth and I just see how grimy is it, right? Is it looking pretty bad? Is it feeling pretty bad? Does it need a little bit of lubrication? And all those things will become apparent as you feel it. Now, what about grit and grime and dirt on the frets themselves? Well, there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. And I'm not going to do every fret on here because that would just be boring for you guys. But, one of the things you can do, use a little bit of this tape that's kind of low tack and surround the fret with it, right? And now I can do a couple of things, and I've done all these things, so that's why I'll walk you through a couple of different things I do for cleaning frets. One thing you can do, use a little bit of alcohol. Again, make sure that you tested it. Just a little spritz of it, and then clean the frets individually, right? And I'm kind of again, I'm always very careful. I don't use a lot of any kind of liquid on my guitar unless I absolutely have to. So that's one way of cleaning it. Now, another way that you could clean the frets, and I think I showed you before, there's these little fret guards, and I think you can get like 3 different sizes for, oh, I don't know, $9, something like that. Sometimes they actually come with fret cleaner. And you can do this a couple different ways. So one way that I've found that works really nice is just to simply put it on the fret and then use an eraser, a clean eraser, and hit the fret with that. Okay. Now, I've also seen people using steel wool. And again, if you use steel wool, triple aught steel wool, you want to make sure that those little tiny pieces don't go anywhere you don't want them to be, especially if you've got electronics going on. But one of the things you could literally do, and I see technicians do it all the time, is basically, I'll just pull this real quick. They just do the whole fretboard, right? And they're cleaning the fretboard itself, and they're cleaning the frets. And then the other thing that I would just maybe warn you about, it's what my brush is for. Whether you use the stuff, the non-woven stuff that I was telling you about before, or you use real steel wool, you want to make sure you get all the little granules out of there and away and gone. And there you go. And so now the next thing would be, well, do I want to use a little bit of lemon oil or something on my fretboard? And in this instance, lately, I've been using this stuff, and I don't use a lot of it. And one of the things I don't do, even though they recommend, is they say, hey, it's got this little cotton thing on the top, just dab a little bit on each piece of fretboard, okay? That just seems like a little bit too much for me. So if I do use it, I put it onto a rag again, and then I begin to treat my fretboard.
Now, John, I have heard people tell me that too much can actually cause the frets to come loose because it could potentially weaken the wood around the fret. Is that, have you
Yeah, you know, anything's possible. I've not heard that or seen that, I guess. I should say I haven't heard it. I haven't seen it. Um, you know, again, you know, it's a wood instrument, and especially, you know, anytime you've got a dark fretboard, it is unfinished for the most part. It may have some oil on it, but it's unfinished. It isn't like it's got plastic or polyurethane on it or something like that, like a maple neck would. Um, and so it will be affected by you know, damp. And so one of the things that that could happen in the right weather conditions with enough damp is, yeah, the frets could become loose. So yeah, again, you know, I'm always cautious. And then the other thing is, again, I
I
don't let
think
anything
quality.
stay on.
I think quality, John, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, or age.
Yep,
It can happen.
yeah, yeah. And we're going to talk more about like what happens if you got a loose fret, or you know, do you want to try to refret your own guitar? We'll do that in a future episode because it's really not as spooky or scary as you think it is. Um, it is an art form, I'll say that. But in any case, and then of course, you know, the rest of the body would be cleaned. And then, you know, the other thing I look for right away before I start restringing, in this case, this is a cheap guitar. And let me change my view again. Um, it's just got these press on for the tuners, but some tuners on a little bit better guitar will actually have a nut that can come loose, and that's where you would use a tool like this, or you would use, you know, a socket set or something. Usually it's about 10 millimeter, and you tighten them down here. Certainly most electrics have got those on there, but I think a lot of the nicer acoustics do too. The other thing I would look at from an acoustic or electric is to make sure that your tuners are tight. And
Hey,
change
John,
this a little bit.
John, I have a tuner here that's on the screen. It's off a
Yeah,
guitar, and you can see where the screw goes in the back of it. So everybody wants to make sure that screw is definitely tightened. And what he was
right.
talking about, you look at the front of it. Um, I prefer to use a socket. I know everybody has their own opinions. Some people like nut drivers. I like the socket because it's deep, and I know I can really get in there. But that's what he's talking about with this screw-on type tuners, um, where they just screw on. And the reason we bring that up is probably 8 out of 10 of my friends' guitars that I've ever restrung, I've had to go in and tighten them at least one or two of their tuners down. So if you're gonna do your own string change, make sure these guys are tight.
Right. And every tuner is you know, a little bit different configuration, but on these tuners, there's a little screw here and a little screw here, kitty corner from each other. And I would just go through and make sure that they're tight. And of course, you don't want to over tighten. And of course, you don't want to strip out a screw because that's a pain. And we've all lived with those kinds of pains in all kinds of household situations. There is a way to fix it. I have had to, you know, put a little bit of glue and a little bit of a toothpick or a little piece of dowel in there and then re-drill. So you can save yourself, right? And we can demonstrate that later on if you guys want. But yeah, anything that's a screw, including, you know, your straps, screws, you know, make sure that those are tight before you, you know, decide to be done for the day. And then with that, I think we'll move on over to talking about actual stringing it up.
So talking about tools and what you choose, they make like little screwdrivers. This is made out of plastic, so it will not dent up or scratch as badly.
Yeah,
So
that's what I like about
just a
this one.
thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yep. That's love this thing.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, whatever you feel, my big thing is, and I've done it, and we're all going to do it, right? There's nothing worse than scraping something across something wood and causing a scratch. On the other hand, if we play a lot, it's going to get worn anyway. So, it's life. I kind of always tell my kids that about when, my kids are in their 30s, they both could afford brand new cars for the first time ever. And, you get that first ding or scratch, and it's like, well, okay, now it's lived in, and you don't have to worry about it now for the life of the car because, unless you keep it in your garage, it's going to get dinged up. So, yeah, let's talk about stringing itself. And I'm not going to make you watch me do all six, although this is my wife's guitar, so I will finish it this evening. Couple things. Let me just change my view here. Here we go. So first thing is the way that the bridge works, and I think this will actually work inside here. Here we go. There's the inside of the guitar. I don't know how well in focus it is, but what you see on the left there is actually the underside of the bridge. And there's actually a piece of it's called a bridge plate that reinforces the soundboard underneath the bridge. And there's holes, there's 6 holes. I don't think we can see all 6 of them because of where the camera is. But the job of the job that pin does. Let me switch back real quick. So these pins, I don't know if I can quite get it to shine. There's an actual little groove in here. And you want that little groove to be facing towards the hole when you put it in. And what it's going to do is it's going to let the string slip by. And so I'm going to take my low E. And by the way, some guitars, in fact, next time, I'll probably do it to this guitar. Most acoustic guitars have got a little slit towards the bridge where the string actually can kind of hang out in there. And I like that better because I think it's a sturdier grip on the ball end of the string in there. But in any case, this goes in there. And then with my little gully facing towards the sound hole, this goes in. But now if I change my view again one more time, where am I? Here we go. Now you can see the string. But what you don't want is you don't want that string to have all kinds of slack. What you want it to do is you want it to be resting right up against the bridge plate, right? And so sometimes you have to give that thing quite a tug. And then the other reason that I take all my strings off, and of course I'll be covering this up, but now I can get in there with my fingers and I can feel to make sure that that ball end is up against where I want it to be. On the bridge. And then I can pull it tight. And then switch back to this. There we go. And then the way I string, the way I used to string is, okay, I would get this all set and then I would go up to the top and I would string the string. What I've started to do lately now, and I'm only going to do a couple right now, I'm not going to do all 6, is I basically put the ball end and get everything under control down here at the bridge.
Hey, John, do you ever pre-bend the ball end so it matches and makes the shape you want it to, so you don't have a break or a heavy bend in the string?
You know what? I never have, but it's not a bad idea. You know, again, and whatever feels comfortable to you. So I would normally do all 6 strings. I'm just going to do 2 right now, for us because I don't want to, burn everybody's time with. Well, the only thing worse than tuning is stringing, to watch somebody do. So, in any case, so I get all 6 of them in there, and I get all these, set, and then I would come down here, and there's more than one way to string. So nobody's right, nobody's wrong is what I'm going to go with. But the way I've been doing it lately is I put the string through. I then make sure that I have my clippers handy. There we go. And I measure down to the next peg head. And then I clip it. And if I could see, it would be even better. All right. And then I pull it back until it's just outside the hole. And then I keep some tension on it here. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of slack going down to my bridge. But now I can start either using a crank or my fingers, or I'm going to use my magic little gun. And then I forgot one very important thing that I always do before I string up. And that is I put a little bit of pencil lead, and you can buy white graphite if you like, but just to lubricate, I put a little bit of graphite in there. And then I don't try to tune everything up to 440A right away. I get them all on there, kind of, you know, they make a tone, but they're not anywhere close to where they need to be. And then I bring them up. And then the other thing that some people will do, different, is you'll actually see them doing this. I don't know if that does anything, but it sure couldn't hurt. Okay. So then let me go back to my other view again. So then, my next string, well, what's another way of stringing? Well, we've all heard of the luthier's knot, and there's a couple other things you can do. And we can all talk about what makes one better than the other. If I was going to do something similar to a luthier's knot, I'd leave a little more slack. So more than another peg head, a little bit more. And then I would do something like this. So it goes under, and then it goes over, and then I'd start to tighten it up. And it Well, of course, we're live, so it messed up a little bit. But that's okay. Did a lot of software demonstration in my day. Things always go wrong. In any case, what I'm really going to do is kind of do that. I won't do the luthier knot because I just don't want to waste the time. And there we go. So I will finish this up when we have a little more time. But anything you guys want to add, or anybody can do a luthier knot other than me? 'Cause anybody should be able to.
Those are hard for big hands. I always end up stabbing my thumb, so I don't use them.
So how about the rest of the crew here? Anything you want to ask or
Oh
do?
yeah, let's open up the microphones and discuss. So everybody can unmute themselves.
I've never used the luthier knot. Kind of like a bass string is once that metal is bent and there's stuff's pushing on it, it holds a lot of force with just that bend and that twist. Bass guitars, you don't see locking tuners on a bass because there's no need.
Right.
So I mean, it's not, you're not trusting it with your life and a weight of a 200-pound dude. It's a steel string.
And there's some Fenders that have the slotted tuners, which makes life easier. Stay unmuted, Leif. Let's talk.
Oh, I've got a big dog. I've got a big dog here that likes to make noise.
That's all right. If he gets too crazy, you can shut yourself off.
I have two questions.
Go for it.
My first question is the blue tape the same as painter's tape? Because I know you said it was low tack.
Yeah. So there's I'll use brand names. So there's the Scotch blue and there's the green frog tape. And
Okay.
either one of those is very low tack. It won't leave, schmutz on your guitar.
All right. And my other question was, thank you, John. I appreciate the names of the tape. The other question I had was, what's a luthier knot? I'm not familiar with that.
Well, it's what I attempted to do on that second one. It wraps underneath and back around, and it's pretty. But I have to tell you, I stopped using it, and I did practice it this afternoon on a different guitar, and it went flawlessly. But of course, this time it didn't. But
yeah,
let's be alive.
I think it was invented to get people to shove the sharp points of guitar strings into the front of their fingertips because there's just not enough frustration in life. Again, I've never needed them, that bent string. Now nylon strings are different. And that's we didn't talk about that, but yeah, the luthier is not. I mean, it's a really good way to maybe poke yourself in the eyeball or the fingertip, but yeah, I'm not a fan.
I wouldn't discourage anybody from trying something they want to try, but I have never met a guitar tech or a luthier that said, "Oh, great, a luthier's knot. Let me take these strings off." It's always, "Oh, great. Let me unwrap all this," because they are. If you've never taken one off, they are harder to take off the pegs too. So, and I wouldn't want to discourage anybody from using it. I am with Leif and John on this one. I have never found it necessary.
Yeah, so, no, my luthier doesn't use them at all.
I watched Justin's guitar restring, and he takes and he'll pull it and take that extra, and then he'll take the backside like towards the bridge, and he'll wrap it around over the top, and then he'll tighten it, underneath to where it'll clamp the excess will be clamped in between the two. I put the YouTube video in the chat that I use for that, and it just his explanation was it just locks it in and keeps it from slipping back in through the hole. The chances of that happen is slim, but he's like, why risk it? You can do this, and it'll tighten it up, and it's not as difficult, and so that's the way I've been doing it, and I've liked it. So
it makes a big difference too if you have that electric screwdriver, because it cranking it, those goofy hand cranks, like these are not that expensive, and then you're not worried about top winding. You're not trying to tie a knot or bend things a certain way. You hold it the length you want. You turn that screwdriver on, and you just hold constant pressure.
Now going back to string types, I use nickel. I bought a set of nickel strings. I didn't like them. It sounded clanky when I played. Like every time the pick would hit the strings, it was very metallic to me. Now my wife sitting across the room said they sounded amazing, and she couldn't hear the clicking of the pick. But at me playing it from right there, you could hear it, and it annoyed the crap out of me. So I went back to the phosphor bronze ones, and they sounded about the same.
Did you try a different guitar pick? What were you picking with?
I tried multiple different types. I got the plastic ones, and I even got a turtle pick. But all of it just sounded like you could just hear them. It just sounded like not really like that, but like hitting a tin can.
I have a titanium Damascus steel pick. Actually, Leif gave it to me.
Nice.
And at first the sound is kind of irritating, but I find that if I run my fingers along the strings, especially like my fingertips, it can help me control like what that sound is, and made it a little easier to use picks that my ear just didn't like the way it sounded. So just kind of what I've experienced with that noise thing, because I get that piece.
I always, it's kind of a chirp. Those metal picks make like a chirp and almost like a bell like noise, and if it's not what you want, it can be annoying, but boy, I mean, it's a neat sound. Different.
Yeah, I've got let me get it out. This right here.
Man, I learned so much tonight.
Can you see that? I don't know if it'll pop up.
Oh yeah, that's pretty.
It's, mother of pearl. My wife got that for me for my anniversary one year.
That's awesome.
It sounds like that. And then it also, I got some wood picks that are made out of different types of wood, and the tone in each one of those is different too. It's weird. I think there's like acacia wood, and then there's hickory, and oak.
Yeah, I've got a wooden one as well.
Yeah, and so they all sound different, which is neat. And then I've got a green turtle shell pick.
That wood pick idea might help me pay a little more attention to the strength that I'm applying to the string. Sometimes I don't realize, and then my fingers get cut up real bad when I go to play without the pick. So thanks for mentioning the different types of picks too. I appreciate that.
I have one guitar that doesn't have pegs.
Doesn't have pegs.
Somebody has a headless guitar.
No, like pegs. So.
Oh.
Yeah, not all guitars have pegs. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we didn't mention that. Not all guitars have tuning or have string pegs. Some of them have string. Some acoustic guitars have string through bridges and everything else, just like electric guitars. So we're trying to cover as much as we can, and we've already gone about 15 minutes over. We're trying to cover as much as we can. It's impossible. There's no way we could have done a nylon string change today. But I know that we have at least Little shameless plug here. We have at least 2 more of these planned. One for October, one for November. Of course, I can't find the notebook I wrote them down in, but I'm sure somebody here knows the exact dates of them. But just be watching Guitars for Vets, Cav Arts for that, obviously, to make the next 2. One in October.
It'll be the 3rd Thursday of the month.
There you go. 3rd Thursday of the month.
And then first Thursday of the month is songwriting class. I hope to see y'all all there.
When's that? Oh yeah,
First Thursday of every month, and this month is the songwriting prompt is Price of Freedom.
Yep.
So I look forward to seeing everybody there on the first Thursday of October.
That's what.
Hey,
Jay?
I'm old and my fingers got hardly any grip on them. If anybody else has that problem, I found a good cure for it. I got this rubber grip tape, and I cut a 1-inch square on it. It's 1 inch wide. I cut a 1-inch length of it and just put it on there and fold it over. And this is how it ends up. Get it up here. Hands quit shaking. And
that's a good idea.
For keeping a grip on the pick without having to squeeze the hell out of it.
I've seen people put sandpaper on them too.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is. Can I introduce you guys to a solution that I've been working on? I work with a lot of canines and do a lot of scuba work, and so to me, can you hear it? So what I started doing is I made a little leash for my guitar picks. So it's a little seed bead, like a seed bead ring on a stretchy cord, and what that does is it slides on my finger, and then it just loops, pops in the same spot. I can tuck it back.
Cool.
Nice.
So just, find some hippy dippy person that likes to do beads and just kind of, tell them, I think I put a picture on the Cav Art site, but that turned out, it was a good.
Leif, that might be your $1 million idea.
Right.
I'm giving it out, giving it away, guys. Give it away.
That actually looks like a pic that I found today that Glenn, my instructor, showed me. It's called the Orbit Zero Gravity.
That's a new.
And I've ordered some, so when they come in, I'm going to be trying them because, I have trouble holding on to my picks too.
Gonna say, careful, you guys are giving ideas to the Tandy leather guys. Next thing you know.
Oh, I use leather guitar picks all the time. You take your scraps, especially if it's thick enough and stiff enough. If it's not stiff enough, hit it with just a little bit of polyurethane, like a quick spray, and it'll make it a little bit stiffer, and you'll get a nice, then you can get rid of that clicking sound.
Hey.
That's what I got here is a heavy gauge leather pick I cut out.
They work great on ukuleles and acoustic strings too, so you don't mess them up.
Now I've got to find some leather ones.
Just make your own.
Yeah.
Just make your own.
I've got some scraps still.
It's easy.
Yeah.
Just got to have a heavier, a thicker leather, thicker gauge leather.
So any other questions about the string changing, cleaning your guitar a little bit?
I think the only thing I have is a little bit of corrosion on it. Is that kind of signal to change it, or
For your strings?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
you'll get discolored as well. They'll get kind of
some
not
people.
rusty, but corroded, like you said. But you'll also notice that the frets that you don't play on farther up, that the string is much shinier, and that's probably a clue that you need to change them because you've worn them quite a bit.
Yeah,
And
there's
that rust, if you go to slide that finger up and down that, if it doesn't go smooth, man.
If you got rust, you're buying the wrong strings.
Yes. Yes.
So a shameless plug for next month, everybody, is we're going to actually we'll pull the strings off again, but we're actually going to do a setup. So we'll talk about the truss rod, how to figure out if your nut height or your saddle height has to change. And, we'll talk about prefab saddles and nuts as opposed to actually trying to make your own. And, we might be able to save you $100 by not having to bring it in and have it set up. So look forward to that.
That's awesome. I look forward to that.
Anybody, anything else here? What I'll do is I'll keep the recording going after this, or shut off the recording, and we'll keep open until y'all want to go to bed. So we'll just go ahead and finish this up for time. All right, we hope to see y'all at the next G4V Workbench on October 16th at 8:30 Eastern Daylight Time. I think it's still Eastern Daylight in October, right? Yeah. And your guitar workbench crew has been, I almost slipped up. Your Guitar for Vets workbench crew has been John DeMarco, Leif Peterson, and Matt Lorance. I don't want to annoy. I'll get it right, Matt. So thank you all for being a part of today's discussion. Guitar for Vets is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to providing relief to struggling veterans through the healing power of music and community. Since 2007, Guitar for Vets has served at-risk United States veterans impacted by PTSD and other service-related trauma. Through our unique 10-week structured guitar instruction program, putting the healing power in the hands of our nation's heroes, helping to foster renewal, connection, and community. On behalf of the Guitar for Vets Workbench crew and myself, be well and keep on strumming.